Welcome to Money 911, where wealth is not just measured in dollars, but in impact, peace, and purpose. I'm your host, Kris Miller, and today we're diving into a conversation that bridges generosity and wisdom, strategy, and soul. My guest today is somebody I deeply admire, Rick Peck, known as the Philanthropy Guy, with decades of experience guiding donors, nonprofits, and advisors. Rick is transforming the way that people give, helping them align their charitable actions with their deepest values. He's the founder of Rick C. Peck Consulting and the Philanthropy Guy, LLC. He's the voice behind Money to Give, a podcast heard in almost 20 countries. More than that, Rick is a visionary. His new platform, Give Trust, is bringing truth, trust, and transformation back into charitable giving. If you ever felt called to give more intentionally or lead your business with deeper meaning, this episode will speak to your heart. Let's welcome Rick to the show. All right, Rick, it's fabulous to have you here on Money 911.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Kris.
And, your topic is what I always talk about, living our legacy. And I show people how to do that. And you are doing it. You're the philanthropy guy, right? I think that is the coolest, even trademarked it. It's very cool. And I just wanted to ask you right off, every great mission starts with a calling. Okay. So what was your deeper why? What behind the journey? What got you into this work?
I'd say I'm going to go back to when I was a kid, and my parents, we came from very modest means. And I do remember growing up where I felt like I was very well taken care of by my parents. But I do remember going into the store and I would ask my mother, can we get this? Can we buy this? And she said, no, we can't afford it. And so that starts to wear on you after a while as a kid. You're like, oh, okay, well, again, not that we were always fed 3 meals a day and we had clothes on our back and we lived very happy lives. But there was just that undercurrent of not having enough money. And so as I got older, I said, I'm gonna see, and this was a little bit after I'd taken a few jobs, but I kind of circled back to the idea of maybe I want to be a stockbroker, or maybe I want to work in the world of finances, and for 2 reasons. One, I want to know how people get wealthy, and I also want to teach other people how they can be wealthy so they can have less worry in their lives and have more peace of mind and more stability. And so I went in and became a financial advisor, and I did that for 7 years, but then that led to philanthropy. So the idea of, okay, now I've learned enough about helping people get to retirement and educate their kids and understand insurance. But now I get to this point where I can go into estate planning and charitable giving and bequest intentions and charitable gift annuities and real estate giving. And so I'm going to go into that direction too. And it's the same idea as you're bringing fulfillment to people. You're going, at the time I was working at Dartmouth College and saying, I can help you give back in the way that you'd like to, or give back to the alma mater that you care so much about. So I guess in the end, my why is I like to be a teacher, and I like to help people, and I like to work with money. And so all those things together, it seemed like it all came together pretty well for me.
Right. And so that your title, the Philanthropy Guy, came forth from that, right?
Yeah, it came about 3.5 years ago, where I'm sitting around a table with some entrepreneur types.
Yeah.
And we were all going off on what bothered us or what we were passionate about. And I'm out there saying, okay, there's a lot of money out there in the world. There's, over $500 billion, or around $500 billion being donated. Why do the nonprofits always feel like they're hand to mouth? Mm-hmm. Why do they feel like they can never get enough money? What's going on? So I said, I feel like there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of potential for matchmaking. Why don't we do more of that? And this one guy sitting at the table, he goes, Rick, you're kind of like the reluctant hero. You're like the philanthropy guy. And then somebody at the table goes, you should grab that domain name. You should go in and grab it. Now, And I said, I'll do it at when the meeting's over. We had another half an hour or so. And they said, no, you have to do it now. We're all looking up the philanthropy guy and we're trying to see if it exists. So you have to buy it now.
Right.
So this woman went on to Namecheap. She bought it for $19 and she gave it to me. She
Oh,
said, there's your domain name, thephilanthropyguy.com. And then I said, thank you. And then I ended up finding that the philanthropy guy at gmail.com was available. So I said, well, I might be onto something here. So as you said, I ended up trademarking the name and that's how it stuck. So it was basically a name somebody else gave me, but I felt like it
yeah,
was a name that was sort of formal, philanthropy, and then guy. He's just a
right,
guy who's trying to help you out. So I felt
right.
like it was a good fit. Yeah.
Well, the power of purpose, right? Doing good while doing well. I actually have a song I've written about that. It's part of the theme song inside of this show. Because to me, and it happened in midlife, I'd say, in my journey is successful, very successful business. But then it, and because I don't have kids, I think that pushed me into thinking that they're all mine. And then I felt that almost a burden of what is it that I can use or take from my business, repurpose it, and give back. So that's where I started changing into living the legacy
Yeah.
and taking all the gifts that I've been given to give back. So that's why I really like this conversation. And I just want to ask you, what does it mean to you to give with purpose?
Um, I think it's finding people's why in the sense of an example I use often is people are solicited for help. Would you
Right,
help me with this? Would you give money to this organization? And so to do something with purpose sometimes feels like it goes back to, well, what does this mean to you as an individual? Is this something that pulls at your heartstrings, or is this something that makes you feel like you're making a difference or something where you're making that impact? So, not that they're not making an impact if someone's asking them to do something, of course they are. But I try to wipe the slate clean with people and say, just if you had no obligations, you had nothing else to think about, and you just could sit back and imagine what your legacy or what your impact would look like, what would mean something to you, what would that be? So I think helping other people give with purpose. And by the way, it's not just money,
right,
it's giving their time, it's giving any talents that they have as board members or advisory team members. It could be that they have a talent for connecting other people, or they could be talented at giving great testimonials. We're really good at saying why we care about something, and maybe they give all of those things. They do all five.
right.
So that to me is giving with purpose. It's saying I've really thought about this. I've really taken the time to imagine how I want to show up in the world, and then I do it. And hopefully there are people like me and others and like you who can help guide people toward what that is in case they get stuck or in case they feel like they don't have permission to do it or that it's too much work, it's too much thinking or
Yeah,
too complicated.
right.
People like you and me, I think we kind of come in and simplify it for them, or at least
Yeah,
help try to be a good guide along the way.
yes, exactly. For some reason, it's made so complicated, and people are so intimidated around money and taxes and finances that like, I don't even want to look at it. And then they wait till they're retired to start their retirement plan. It's so crazy. So running into people like you that do this um, empowerment for people so that they can really wrap around living their legacy is so inspiring. And it, no matter, you know, this is our conversation that we believe that everybody, no matter what their income is, right, has the ability, like you said, to be a philanthropist by giving their time. Time is more valuable almost than money. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
there's not a
it's
lot of it, and it's going
no,
very fast. So,
right.
it's almost easier to write a check. Okay, I did that.
Yeah,
Right. Pat yourself on
yeah.
the head. But the really is like the giving of the time. And so, what can we teach the next generation to give from the heart and not just from the wallet?
Well, I think part of it starts with listening to first of all, listening to yourself, listening to your own desire. Like when you're looking into the world and you see something that bothers you or something you want to aspire to, I think that's important to do that, to take note of that.
Hmm.
It bothered me to see that person without a house, freezing on the side of the road. Or it bothered me that I learned that my friend dropped out of school because he didn't have enough money to stay in school. Or it bothered me that I saw, the environment seems to be eroding and or it's being more polluted. That bothers me. I want to do something about that. So I think that's giving from the heart in the sense of it speaks to you. It makes you want to be more empathic toward ways you can be making a difference. And then I think it's also on the flip side, it is listening to other people around you, like your friends, your family, people you trust, people you admire, and find out what they're concerned about. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do what they're doing, but I think that's also saying, like, well, what speaks to their heart? What can I learn from what they're doing that might be insightful for me as an individual? Excuse me. So I think it's doing both. It's just taking from your own experiences and it's taking from the experiences of others and saying, um, there seems to be a purpose here. There seems to be something that we can be leaning into and toward. We can learn a lot about it, and maybe we can make a big difference. And we can do it individually, and we can also do it together.
Yeah, I like that. And you talk about, and that's what you're talking about when you talk about purposeful giving versus passive giving, right?
Yeah, purposeful. Like passive is you're just responding to solicitations, you're responding to requests.
Hmm.
You're doing it, again, you're doing it probably because you care about the person who's asked you or you feel some sort of an obligation, but it's not really speaking to your heart or your mind.
Hmm.
And so the purposeful is saying, I hope to do this with intention and it will drive me. I will get up in the morning and look forward to making a difference in that way versus feeling like, oh, I have all these obligations and
Right.
I'm so tired and I'm being dragged out. I mean, in the world of charitable giving, sometimes that's called donor fatigue. You feel like there's just so much to do,
Yeah.
and yet nothing ever feels satisfying or rewarding. It's
Hmm.
always just more and more and more. It's like you're being inundated. It's
Yeah.
almost like the opposite of making a difference. You feel like you're making no difference.
Right.
If anything, the world seems to be getting into a worse place and you're just watching it go down. That's
Right.
the opposite of
Right.
purposeful, where maybe you go in laser focused to
Hmm.
one or two things. You say, I know I can make a difference in that way. And what would that look like? And again, being open to what the world is it's offering to you while also taking from your own experiences in your own life and saying, this has been speaking to me for a while. I just haven't been really listening to it. But now I think I need to do this. Maybe it's I've retired now and I'm ready to go and start spending more time in this way. Or maybe my kids are flown the nest and I have more time to be able to devote to this. Or maybe I have young kids and we do this together, but it's something that means something to us, something we're proud of. And when we go to the supper table and talk about it, it's like a pleasant experience for us.
That's
That's
right.
purposeful. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you think so many donors or generous ones miss the opportunity to align their giving with their values?
They don't take the time to do it, or they feel obligated to continue doing what they've always done because that's the obligation. It's an intentional act to sit down and say, I'm going to decide to do this. I mean, you can apply it to many aspects of life. Say, you talk about being present, being mindful. I know what I'm eating. I'm being very mindful about what I'm
Hmm.
eating. I'm being very mindful about my sleeping habits, my exercise habits. And so giving back or spending back to you said your precious time,
Right.
how am I going to spend my time here on earth? How am I going to do something that makes a difference? And so it's taking the moments to do that, to sit back and go, let me think about that. And let me talk to other people about that and come to some sort of a conclusion. By the way, that will change. In
Right.
5 years, they may decide, same people may decide that's not what I want to do anymore, but that's okay
Yeah.
because it means I've evolved in a really positive way. And making a difference 5 years ago is different from what it is today, might be different from what it is 5 years from now. But no matter what, it's always done with the mindset of this is important to me, or I feel like
Right.
this is something that is going to make a difference.
Right. Well, earlier before we turned on the record button, we were talking about give trust. It's a movement of integrity. Maybe you could tell us about it.
Sure, thank you. Give Trust actually kind of springboarded off of that conversation around the philanthropy guy, how I became the
Yeah,
philanthropy guy. It was a similar group of people at the table. And when we were talking about what making a difference would look like, we said, well, what would it look like to match make nonprofits who are showing up, giving great qualitative and quantitative data, this type of stuff that donors really want to see. Maybe they don't even know that they want to see it, but it's something that shows up and it's a good dashboard for them. Match that with the donors who show up and say, this is the kind of difference I want to make in the world, exactly what you and I were talking about. This is how I want to show up. And then you have this matchmaking system where Give Trust match makes the nonprofits with the donors and everybody wins. In the meantime, Give Trust right now is at a stage where we're just trying to get the nonprofits to fill out these profiles and to do what they need to do so that they are grant ready and donor ready. So that's what Give Trust is. Today, it's more of an instructional system, but the end game is to get as many nonprofits to fill out these profiles and put it in the system
that's
so the
great.
donors have this huge amount of choices and they can qualify things. They can sort of subdivide based on what their interest areas are, and then they eventually will be able to give to exactly where they want to give, back to being purposeful. They say, if I only care about this particular thing, like this geography or this particular, or I want to only support small nonprofits, or I only want to do things that where they have this type of a team leading it, or whatever the case may be, whatever their qualifiers are, they're able to pull that up in the system and be able to give accordingly. So that's what Give Trust is.
That's great. So do you have it up where people could go to it or
Yeah, well, right now we're trying to get as many nonprofits to fill out their
perfect?
profile, and then
Yeah,
eventually phase two will be to have the donors fill out their profile.
that's great.
And so we're right at phase one with the Give Trust. And as
Nice.
a matter of fact, this past week we've been marketing it out to a specific cohort of nonprofits, and a lot of people are showing up. A lot of people are
Fabulous.
coming in, looking at the survey. Right now we're doing what's called the 5 minute survey just to kind of see where they're at,
Hmm.
to see how ready they are for grants. And then we say, all right, well, as a result of that, you either are in great shape or we recommend you take these courses or you do these types of things to get yourself more grant ready. You work with a professional consultant, but one way or the other, we're going to coach you up and get you there so that you'll be taken very seriously by donors and funders. So that's what we're doing this past week, is trying to see if there's a cohort of nonprofits who show up and and hopefully take the advice and get themselves to a better place.
That's great. That's a beautiful idea. So, in talking with entrepreneurs and CEOs and board members and those that are listening now, what is the one blind spot that most businesses, leaders have when it comes to philanthropy?
Well, a huge misconception by many people, business leaders and otherwise, are that the less money a nonprofit spends, the better a nonprofit it is. So, in other words, it's almost like a race to zero expenses.
Uh,
And what's also a myth is that the more money a nonprofit spends on its operating expenses and so on, the worse a nonprofit it is, like up to and including it's corrupt or whatever the case may be.
mhm.
A different way to look at it is, would you hold a for-profit to the same criteria? Or do you actually welcome a for-profit to invest in itself to be able to make more impact? So there's a great movie out there, a documentary called Uncharitable, and it speaks exactly to that.
Hmm.
It speaks to the idea that uh, sometimes a nonprofit can spend more money on its infrastructure, and at first blush, it's one of the bad guys. And then you find out it's actually investing in all the right ways and making more impact in that particular field than maybe many other of its nonprofit peers.
Mhm.
So it's very counterintuitive for some people to say, well, they're spending more money, but they're also netting more money and they're making much more of a national impact. So
Mhm.
that's something I coach a lot of board members and for-profit type entities into saying that let's be careful of quantifying everybody in you spend more money, you're bad, you spend less money, you're good.
Mm.
It's actually a healthy thing to invest in yourself as a nonprofit for sustainability reasons. And also as far as fundraising goes, it's good to invest 5 to 10% in your fundraising operation rather than say, oh, we've fundraised and did it at $0. It's like, well, that will last you only so long. And then after a while, you actually could be losing money or you're
Mm.
not netting as much money because you're not investing in your operation. So that's one of the biggest things I talk about with people is kind of the myth of expenses and how expenses for some are viewed as bad when in fact they can be quite good.
That's really a good point. I like that. That just changes the whole perspective. And maybe you could share someone who's, trying to integrate giving into their brand authentically, right? Without feeling performative, which I see a lot of, everybody speaks these buzzwords, but they're not connected to the heart. It's just like, oh, if I say this, they'll like me, right?
Yeah. No, good point. I kind of break down what you said into two parts. One is
Okay.
there's sponsorship, and I use that word very intentionally. Sponsorship often is to say, I'm going to put my logo on the back of the baseball uniforms at my local little league. And what I get out of that is people see my logo and they see my brand and maybe they buy services from me. So there's that. But authentic cause marketing or brand marketing is different. That's where an institution, a for-profit, could say, "We're going to put something out there that we really care about, like eliminating human trafficking or world peace or helping veterans." That has really nothing to do with our brand. But
Right.
what it does is it's authentic in the sense of we want to make a difference in this way. And so people will equate our grocery store chain with helping veterans or
Right.
our ice cream factory with world peace or
Right.
so I think people buy it on the idea of we just like the fact that you're authentically showing up. Ice cream and world peace may not have much to do with each other, but I'm more willing as a consumer to buy this excellent ice cream at Ben and Jerry's to know that they can go out and do something positive with it. It really gels well. People feel good about their purchases. So, and I think Ben and Jerry shows up authentically as well. And the other place I was talking about with grocery stores and veterans, that's Kroger's grocery store chain. So I think that when institutions are able to do that, it blends quite seamlessly together. If they're doing it inauthentically, it kind of shows itself after a while. I think that
Exactly.
it's like, you know what? I don't think you really care about making a difference with that cause.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're never telling the story. You don't
Right.
seem quite proud of it. I think most of
Yeah.
us can feel the difference.
Absolutely.
And of course we can see it in the numbers where you could say after so many years, this much has been invested into
Mm.
that cause, and this is what the results have been. I mean, when they're
Right.
showing that kind of data
Yeah.
independent of how their grocery store chain's doing or how their ice cream factory's doing, that I think plays well to the public. Sadly, I don't think a lot of corporations do that very well.
No.
They're not, there are good examples of that out there, but I can't say that there's a lot of institutions, a lot of for-profit institutions that are being that intentional.
No.
I even sat in a
No.
room full of family businesses. And I thought I threw out a softball question when I was doing a presentation one time. I said, who are your heroes in the world of philanthropy? Who are the ones you think are doing a really amazing job? And nobody had an answer. Not one person. There were a bunch of
Mm.
CEOs in that room. Nobody had a hero. And I
Wow.
thought, well, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
They must know some institution that they feel like is doing a great job. And they didn't have an answer. So I thought, well, clearly we're not having this conversation enough with businesses for them to know who their role models might be.
Right. That's crazy, but it's
Yeah.
true. And I never
Yeah.
get that feeling at all, really. Other than, oh, they're just trying to write that off their taxes or something. not
Yeah.
not so heartful. Well, that's what you're doing is bringing the heart. It almost is a spiritual practice, right? People are feeling kind of out of it, right? But this is a way to bring heaven on the earth where we're giving and it's charitable and it's built inside of everything we're talking about, right?
Yeah, we're part of the human race where we're making a difference in our own way. I mean, people who have done well, if
Right.
they can authentically turn that around and give back in ways that are meaningful to them,
Right.
that's a great symbiotic relationship. I did
Right.
well, I'm living a good life, and I'm also giving back and helping other people live a good life.
Right. Doing well by doing good.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
As the song
Yeah.
says, power of purpose.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And it's
Right.
why people get up. Why are you here? Like,
Right.
what are you getting up for today? What kind of a
Exactly.
difference are you going to make in the world today?
Exactly. That should be some of our first thoughts, right? And
Yeah,
gratitude.
right.
We're grateful. I am grateful.
Yes.
I'm grateful for having you on the show today and having this great conversation and look forward to, multiplying it and continuing it. And so thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing us to have this really rich conversation.
Well, before we sign off, tell everybody how they can get in contact with you.
Well, thank you. I already mentioned it, but the philanthropyguy.com is
Sure.
my website, and also the philanthropyguy@gmail.com is another way to reach me.
Perfect.
And if you go to my website, you'll see how you can contact me through there. And I also have a podcast that you can listen to if you'd like called Money to Give. And I also have a newsletter. So those are different ways that not only you can reach me, but I can reach you and give you some of the hopefully good stuff that I try to put out there into the world as part of my purpose.
It is good stuff. Giving is good stuff.
That's
Thank you so much.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Appreciate
Thank you, Kris.
All right.
Thank you.
Rick, your wisdom, your heart, and your clarity have brought such a light to this conversation. Thank you for showing us that philanthropy isn't just about money. It's about vision, values, and the world we leave behind. Friends, if this episode moved you, share it with somebody who wants to give well, not just big. And make sure you subscribe and leave a review. We do appreciate it. As always, I'm Kris Miller reminding you true wealth is found not in what we keep, but in what we share. There's so much to learn about healthy money. I hope today's discussion brings you one step closer to securing and protecting your future. So you can get started on the right foot, go to meetwithkrismiller.com and schedule your free financial fitness strategy session. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Money 911 so you don't miss our next episode, which includes health, wealth, and peace of mind.